All right, continuing on, let's turn percents into fractions. So we're starting with a percent and we want to turn that into a fraction. Now, we remember that 40.2% means out of 100, but we've got this decimal here. So if we're going to write this out of 100, we're going to write 40.2 out of 100. And that suddenly gets confusing because we've got a fraction and a decimal going on. We need to get rid of that. We've got too much stuff happening here. We want to get rid of the decimal. So what we're going to have to do is multiply this by 10 so that we have 402 thousandths, right? So we get rid of that decimal by multiplying by 10, bumping it over here, but we have to do the same to the top and the bottom. So we have 402 thousandths. Now that we've got 402 thousandths, we can go ahead and start to simplify this fraction. So what do I notice? Well, I'm noticing that they're both even numbers. So maybe I can divide by 2. So I'm going to write that again down here. I've got 402 thousandths. Divide by 2 to both the top and the bottom. Right? And so 1,000, half of 1,000 is going to give me 500. And I have 402 divided by 2. Well, half of 400 would be 200. Half of 2 is 1. So I have 201 over 500. And that is as simple as this goes. So we have now turned this percent into a fraction. So 40.2% is the same as 201 over 500. Let's try it with another one. 84.4%. So again, we can take a minute and just write that. 84.4 over 100, because percent means out of 100, but we've got a decimal and a fraction, and that's not working for us. We need to get rid of that decimal. So we can say, oh, let's do times 10. We're going to get rid of this decimal, move it over by multiplying by 10, but we have to do the same to this one, and we end up with 844 thousandths. Now, we've got 844 thousandths, and that needs to be simplified. I'm seeing that both of these, again, are even numbers. So I'm going to write it down again at the bottom so I can have room to keep working. Let's say we're going to divide by 2 to both the top and the bottom, right? So 1,000 divided by 2, we remember was 500. Ooh, 844. Look at all of these numbers are even, so we can just think of what's half of 4, half of another 4, which is 40 really, and half of the 8, which is half of 800, and we'll end up with 422. But I notice, wait, I still have even numbers in both of these. I'll bet I could go another step. I'll bet I could divide by 2 again. What's half of 500? 500 divided by 2 is 250. And 422 divided by 2, still all these wonderful even numbers, right? So we get 211 over 250. And this cannot be simplified any farther, and that is our final answer. All right, so we've got an idea of how to turn percents into fractions. We just rewrite it as that fraction, get rid of any decimals as necessary, and then go ahead and simplify. Okay, so one more new piece for today. Let's work on making a fraction into a percent. All right, so we start with a fraction. We have 2/3. Step 1 says, multiply by 100% to turn it into a percent, right? This is not a percent. It's not out of 100. It's a fraction. So we need to turn it into a percent. So 2/3 times 100%. Another way to write this is 2/3 times 100 equals 200 over 3%. Now we've got an improper fraction going on here, which we know we're going to need to simplify. So step 2, do some simplification. I've rewritten the same thing over here. 200 over 3% equals, now we have to say how many 3's are there in 200? Well, if we count them up, we can think of how many 3's are there in 20. Oh, there's going to be almost 7, right? So almost 70 gives us a clue. Maybe you're going to have to do this part long division, but I went ahead and gave you the next answer. When I do 200 divided by 3, I get 66, but I have 2 left over, so I have 66 and 2/3. And remember, we've already multiplied this by percent, so the percent is there. All we're doing in this step 2 is just simplifying this because it's an improper fraction. Let's try another one. Okay, let's say we have 4/7. Remember, step 1 is multiply by 100%. So that's how we're just taking the fraction to make it a percent out of 100. So 4/7 times 100%. And we would get 400 over 7%. But that's an improper fraction, right? You have turned this into a percent. Excellent job, but we know we need to simplify. So step 2, simplify it. So I rewrote the same number down here, 400 over 7%. And how many 7s are there in 400? Well, I've already went ahead and done all the math for you. There are 57 of them total, but they don't go in perfectly. I have 1 left over. So I have 57 and 1/7%. All right, I want to show you something because it's entirely possible that your parents are going to help you on this. And they're going to look at what we just did and say, whoa, that's so crazy. I've never done that before. So here's how your parents are probably going to tell you how to do it, which is also a great way. There's one little thing that doesn't always work perfect on theirs, but it can be a wonderful way to do it too. So I want to show you what they might be thinking. Well, so they're going to say, okay, we need to take this fraction and turn it into a percent. And what they will do is they'll go, oh, wait, fractions are division. So 2/3 is like 2 divided by 3. And they know that 2 divided by 3 will give you a decimal, right? Now we have to go back to, wait, way up at the top here, do you remember how to change a decimal to a percent, right? We have to do times 100 to get it to a percent. So what they'll do is they'll take that decimal and they'll go times 100. And what they're probably doing when they're doing times 100, and they might not even say it, is, again, they're probably doing this one over here where they're thinking, oh, just move it over 2 places. So they're going to say, let's take this decimal and move it over 2 places, and we will get 66. Now, this line here means it repeats. When you do this on your calculator, you get a 6 forever and ever and ever, and that is the same as 2/3%. So they would get 66 and 2/3%. Or here's another one with the 4/7. How would that work? Well, they would say 4 divided by 7, right? And then they would get this crazy long decimal. And they'd say, well, let's do that times 100, or move the decimal over 2 places, and they would get 57.14287%. The problem with this is we've still got a decimal, right? And so we have to deal with that, versus when we look up here, we can find that it's 57 and 1/7. This decimal here equals 1/7, but that's not one that we know off the top of our heads. I'm guessing your parents don't know that that is 1/7, right? So this is a totally fine way to do it, but just know that you're going to end up with a decimal over here, versus if you work through it this way, multiply by 100% and then simplify, same as this one, right? Multiply by 100% and then simplify. You will end up with 0 without that decimal happening. You'll have your 66 and 2/3%. You'll get your answer 57 and 1/7%. Okay, so 2 different ways to do it. Really, whichever makes sense to you and is working for you is okay, right? There's not one correct way to get to this answer. There's lots of ways to do it. So here's a quick overview. If you need to pause your video right now so that you can see all of this and remember it as you are working on your math today, go for it. There's all the directions for you. All right, good luck. Have a great day.